Understand that there's our microcosm, which is the physical body, or our individual energy and our essence, our spirit or our soul, you might say, in addition to the physical body. And then there's everything else outside of us. And there's this connection point that we all have between ourselves and everything else. And in some ways, you might say one thing is the breath. This is one way that we connect ourselves to the world around us. The trees make oxygen. We breathe in the oxygen. We make carbon dioxide. The trees breathe in. So in that way, there's a lot of ways that we can see our interconnected relationships to the world. We're constantly eating food. This food is being grown by other people. The food itself is being transmuted into our own DNA, and then we give any unused byproduct back to the earth so that it can be transformed once again into new life. So there's, of course, infinite ways of seeing this with relationships as well, in terms of how our relationships are reflections of our own selves, and yet they also speak to a greater interconnectedness. And as we see that we can almost put ourselves we can put ourselves in other people's shoes, and this is actually very beneficial to do in a lot of ways when you have the appropriate boundaries, or you are emotionally stable in yourself, to be able to know what your boundaries are and what other people's boundaries are, and at the same time having that empathy and compassion to be able to resonate with another person who is in a completely different situation than you is probably one of the most valuable skills that a human being can have. And to see the world as it is right now from the standpoint of, why is the world the way it is? Why do some people have nothing and others have everything? This is a very big question. And of course, there's a lot of ways of asking about the different injustices in the world, and wondering how any of us can do anything about it, in terms of, either seeing all of the different charities, or seeing all of the different ways that we can do good in this world, and also seeing how our perspective and our attitude and the way that we go about doing good, or just being ourselves, that we can get better, and that we can grow in our hearts. This is something that the Dalai Lama speaks to at great length. Pretty much his entire teaching is about love and compassion for all beings, being of greatest benefit to humanity, and understanding that connection point is in your heart, that you being of greatest benefit to humanity is you being greatest benefit to yourself. And that looks different for everybody. It doesn't mean everybody goes out and build houses or build schools or whatever, teaches spirituality or just anything that has to fit into a box. It's just knowing that when we are living with connection to compassion, to love, and understanding that space within ourselves is the starting point for us to transcend through any other limitations that we may have. So there's a neurobiological component to it, and an ancient yoga component, of course, that neuroscience is just kind of mapping the same things that yoga maps, and then the emotional mapping is just another layer of it as well. And so as we tune into love, a lot of love comes from the heart. When we tune into ego's the medulla, the back of the head, this primal brain area, the I identifier with survival. Then we have our soul, our source, the I, the universal I, this third eye, this space of intuitive perception, the prefrontal cortex, the most evolved brain region of any creature ever discovered. Us. Lucky us. So we actually have a lot to learn from the teachings of neuroscience and yoga, and how these things all work together. So there's 4 aspects of mind in yoga. There's what's called buddhi, mon, top of the head, ahamkara is the ego, and then chitta is the heart. And as we tune into the relationship between those things, we understand that as we step into ourselves, as we step into the knowledge of self, this is here. This is our understanding, our overstanding, our inner standing, right? However you want to feel about that there is a great deal of memory that comes with learning who you are. And it's not so much about learning in a lot of ways. A lot of it is about remembering, knowing that whatever it is that you were thinking you needed to learn, or whatever is already out there, is a lesson just to teach you what to remember about yourself that you just needed to remember. And so in this way, we're always remembering, we're always waking up. In many ways, that we are a species with amnesia, that we have been through perhaps many cycles before of awakening into higher states of consciousness or awareness as a species, as a collective, and then coming back into states of forgetfulness, more or less, of our divine nature. And this awareness of the self or of the soul is simple in the sense of we're already all it. So there's no need to go anywhere or to seek out the something that is outside of us. The ancient story of the gods were hiding the most secret treasure of all, and they were wondering where they wanted to hide it from the humans, because we had to go on our own journey to find it. And they're like, one of them said, oh, let's hide it at the bottom of the ocean, or let's hide it in a volcano, or let's hide it in outer space. And then one of the great spirits said, let's hide it within them. So everything that we already have is what we need. When you wake up in the morning, when you lift your head off the pillow, remember, I already have everything that I need. I already am everything that I need. I don't need to go out and try and be something I'm not. That's ego. That's us trying to live in this space where there is tension, right? And when we move into this space where it's relaxation, this is us knowing ourselves, knowing what we need to do, knowing where we need to be, trusting that, and really feeling and embracing that within ourselves. And this takes practice. It doesn't come easily necessarily at first, but once it's trainable, and for many of us, we already are doing it, so it's just a matter of getting better. It's just sometimes we forget, sometimes we get caught, so we need reminders. And we're always working, more or less to understand that ego is like a drop in the ocean of ourselves, right? That when we see the bigger self, it still contains the ego. That the ego is allowed to be what it needs to be. It can still be healthy and well-formed and able to play its roles in the world. And still, you, as understanding that you are beyond just an ego, that there is a much greater containerless container that you are, and that is eternal. That is eternal wisdom, eternal knowledge, the beyond version of you that is not necessarily explicitly connected to the physical body. That you are light, or you are consciousness. You are something that is just animating the physical form and animating the thoughts, and that there is this power that is perhaps beyond you and your you-ness, and yet you as a distinct identity are connected to that. So what we might say is that in yoga terms, we might just say soul and spirit. Like there's the great spirit where everything is all one in the great spirit, and then our individual soul, or our individual spark, whatever you want to call that. And then that is like the non-physical. And what, in terms of religious views or whatever, this is just a way to define this animating force, and to understand that our awareness of this power that is flowing through us, this energy, this life, that it's not necessarily ours. Like, I didn't make my body, I didn't make air, I didn't make any of it. I'm just here, like, and like, to take full responsibility for all of this would be I'm here, I'm enjoying this experience, but I didn't invent it. and I feel like that perhaps it gives way for more humility in the experience of life, is to be able to understand that because we're just here as a part of a show, more or less, that we have the ability to change it. We have the ability to at least change ourselves, and that's really all we need to do when it comes to making a difference in the world. That this is the big point of this whole thing, is that there's a lot of going out in the world to change things, and a lot of the time all it takes is really going within, right? That, you know, and the classic thing is like with wars, where it's like, you know, each person wants to blow each other up because that's what they think is going to create peace. And when did that ever work? there's a serious call to questioning basic ways of living, where we understand that life is sacred, that there is a much greater level of emotional intelligence, perhaps, that the human species can foster at a very high level, in terms of not just in families, but in terms of government and any kind of like beneficial organization that is doing service to the world. Understanding that there is a higher teaching, a higher practice, a way to bring that energy back within yourself and still be of service to the world. That this always putting energy out without having that inner awareness. Bring the inner awareness, be more of service. That's the simple idea. That's all there is to it. And understanding that a lot of the times we get caught up in this thing of, you know, am I doing enough? Am I doing good? Am I doing right? And the challenge of knowing that you, in your heart, you know, when you feel joy, when you feel love, when you feel bliss, those are signs. Listen to those signs. When you look at the outside world and you feel all of these different energies around you of people influencing, or you know, the news, or just anything, seeing that where you are within yourself and feeling that love within yourself for yourself, allowing that love to guide your energy like a hot air balloon, feeling that love rising into these centers of higher consciousness, feeling like you are awakening these centers through this flow of love. And love is an energy. Love is what makes the world go round, whether you believe it or not, that there is this changeless power, this eternal power. And, you know, like Jimi Hendrix says, when the power of love overcomes the love of power, the world will know peace. This is really simple, and it's something that we all, you know, in a battlefield of life are faced with, perhaps more often than we would like to be. And that there's this experience of growing into ourselves, growing into compassion, rather than only relying on the intellect or only relying on the ego. Understanding that we have this love that grows within us. And when that love grows, it makes our experience of life infinitely more powerful. And it's like that same thing of, no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. So trying to just force and ascend, like changing vibes, like I'm gonna change this. This is gonna change yourself. This is the whole thing, is we're all working on changing ourselves. So in being honest and being truthful and being connected to what is it that I can change about myself today. Don't try to do the biggest thing like that you think you need to do. Maybe for some of you, maybe you'd really need to do that. But for a lot of us, there's just little things that we can do perhaps before tackling the bigger things that we know are important. And then consistently being in our hearts, showing up here, showing up with feeling, connecting to that space within ourselves. Of course, stretching, back bends, anything that physically opens the heart, like just leaning back in a chair. Oh, gotta believe it, feel it, know it, love it. So it takes practice. It takes a lot of practice. And when we are tuned in to that space of connecting every day, growing this heart, growing this feeling, then we can feel the world. We understand that we have our energy, we have our love, we can grow our love, we can share our love. And we can use our intellect to make that love a beautiful, just blossoming garden of friendships or whatever it is that you see for yourself, and making that space grow, bringing more joy to the world around you is a beautiful thing. So not to say that only, bringing your energy up, it's a matter of finding that balance of knowing that the more we deepen our spiritual connection, the more we understand that is a truth in our nervous system. That as we awaken this energy, using our breath, using contemplative practices, understanding that there's a wide network of communities around the world that are bringing spiritual practices to each individual, and for whatever way that works for them, that there's a depth to life that becomes much more richer, and we understand the connections on a much deeper level when we take the time in silence to tune into ourselves and to tune into all of these things that we want to do, or the things that we want to be, or how we want to change the world, all of that. When we tune in and we really find that calm space within our heart, calm feeling, calm thinking, connecting the two, then feeling as though when we are integrated and at peace, in bliss, that this is our service to the world. And that by practicing peace, by practicing joy, by practicing love towards yourself, of course, towards your enemies, towards strangers, towards your friends, being impartial in that love, in that way of kindness, and doing our best to be in that space where we're transmuting our thoughts. If we feel angry, or if we're starting to feel bad about ourselves, or whatever it is, transmuting those thoughts, transforming those thoughts into how can I be of benefit to this person? How can I be of benefit to myself? How can I change myself first? And knowing that all this doing and all this trying, all of that tension creating activity is perhaps it's a learning and it's a lesson, and at the same time it gives way when we surrender to something much deeper, and it's inspiration. It's just this simplicity of being a friend, of sharing inspiration, and of being there for others, and really holding your own as an individual, and knowing that you are complete and whole in yourself to be of service to the world already as you are.